And we are on Jazz Street with Rochester Music Hall of Famer Don Potter. Don, welcome back to Rochester.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
So, Don, talk about what brought you to Rochester in the first place.
Oh, in the first place, money,
That'll do it.
there's money here now. There's music here. We got hired as a rock and roll band a long time ago. And it was in a funky little club called the 414 on Ridge Road West. Later became a coffee house, which Bat McGrath and myself opened and really enjoyed it. I liked the city that really likes music. And we just started, we clicked, it seemed like it worked, and we just kept coming back. We always got paid, and so we always enjoyed it. Not to make it only sound about like that, but you can play a lot of places and go home hungry night after night, so not so here. Seems like it's a city that appreciates, that's what this is about, is a city that appreciates having great music, and will pay for it. If they like it, they'll pay for it.
Speaking with Don Potter. So, Don, give us an idea of what it was like, because it's late 60s, early 70s, you, the Mangione brothers, and Tony Levin and Steve Gadd, we were creating this whole new world of music with mixing rock and folk and jazz all as one. Talk about how did that all come together?
It's almost like a divine accident of some kind. And we had Bat McGrath and I had a nightclub, that Holly Morris's Alley, which was 414 Ridge Road. And Chuck would come in at like 2 o'clock in the morning after he played at the Shakespeare Lounge. And he had Jerry Nywood in his band, Vinny Ruggiero, sometimes Steve Gadd and Tony Levin. It's the best band I ever heard in my life. And I'm looking at Chuck, and they're playing on the stage in the center of the bar on the Shakespeare. I'm not trying to badmouth the Shakespeare. You can take that out if you like. But nobody was paying any attention to this amazing band. And so Chuck would come in. I said, Chuck, man, you guys are amazing. You need to get where somebody is listening. So the little coffee house, people sat in and listened to music. And the moment the listening connected with the music and the music connected with the listener, then everything started to explode. Chuck did a concert here at the Eastman, and using all those great players and mixing in that funky folk thing, that was way off the track. You know what I mean? It's so far away from how those guys and the wonderful music they could play. But as soon as that kind of came together, that thing about the people, thought, I feel these guys are reachable. And then it put that great talent of those gifts on a person level, on a one-on-one level. And as soon as that happened, it took off very fast. And it was only a matter of time.
Which culminated in 1970 with Friends in Love.
Yes, that's how that began. And so with Chuck writing this great music, of which was just sitting around. That music was just wasting away. And we began to play it together. He enjoyed the uniqueness of it. It was very different than what he was accustomed to, as was the audience. And so it was just a matter of putting the two things together. And it sparked. That was a time in Rochester's history that's unusual. That's starting to come back, by the way.
Speaking with Don Potter. So, Don, talk about your process as a singer-songwriter, because do you hear the words first or the music first?
Depends on how upset I am. If I'm really hearing something, I want to get it said, I'll have to write the lyrics and then try to fit something to it. But most of the time, I'm just messing around and I discover something or feel something. I start to play it, and that creates an emotion, which creates a lyric and one thing and another. I wrote a few number one hits back in Nashville for some country music and stuff like that, which seems like that's a simpler style. It's not simple at all. In fact, being simple is much more difficult than being complex. If you can be strange and be strange, you're writing off what you can do based on how strange you are versus what did you really say. So I say that about singers. If I'm listening to how you're singing and not what you're saying, I think I'm missing something. Think about what you're singing.
Speaking with Don Potter, so talk about that in terms of, let's say, making music for the Judds, for example, and you're writing for them, or were you writing those for yourself and the Judds took that, or is it something you were writing here, I'm writing this piece of music, I think it'll work well with this artist or that artist?
No, I always wrote for myself. Quite selfish, and just thought about it. And when they would hear it, and I wasn't ever trying to plug a song because they were friends and we were working with them all the time. But they would often say, "Would you play that song you played for me?" And then they got interested. And after a time, they began to record some of those things because they wanted that one-on-one indigenous. They felt like I was a part of them, and that would be indigenous to them. And so, managed to write a few of their songs. And
I'd say, yeah. Speaking with Don Potter. Don, it's funny. Whenever we play Places Warm, for example, the phones still light up after all these years.
Kidding. Wow, that's great. I'm glad to hear it. You never know. No one ever knows what's ever going to happen. It's like producing something, and is it going to be a hit? There's nobody who can tell you that. After a time, I recorded over 110 hits at one point. And after a time, you can almost feel like, I think I know this one's going to be one. You can almost do that. But there's still an unpredictable, factor that you can't actually second guess. But most of the time, if you like it, somebody else will too.
So tonight, it's Don Potter and friends. Who are going to be the friends playing with you tonight?
There's a guy named Bruce Daly, who's a keyboard. He's not quite a keyboard player totally. He plays bass, he plays drums, he plays really great guitar. I don't let him play the guitar. And he's just a great all-around musician. He is a symphony writer. He's done a number of things in his life. Anyway, he enjoys playing. He loves to play out and stuff. And Wes Foy is the bass player, who's also a really good trombone player. And they're all like Eastman kids. Are all overeducated. They're top heavy. But the reality, they love to get in the dirt and get into the funk and then get into the jazz and get into the far out. And I think if we can embrace all of those things, we just don't need to live in one spot all the time. The key word is that's what Chuck was about. He didn't just jazz all the time. He didn't mind taking a few steps left and right, and that's what made it more accessible, I think.
Some words about Bat McGrath and his legacy.
Bat could turn a phrase like nobody I've ever heard, and in one line of a song, you'll know more about what's going to happen in this song. And that was a clever way. We wrote together. He would come up with one-liners that were amazing, and I would try to write at least some music that was hopefully as clever. But it was an awesome way he could present something. He could sing it in a way nobody else could. We went through lots of changes together. We played music for a long time together, and I split off, as often will happen with whoever's. Went to Nashville and began to work as a studio musician. He kept writing songs and so on, and so one time he came to Nashville, and I'd already cut some hits and stuff, and I said, well, let me help you. I said, what little I can do, and I introduced him to the Judds, and he wrote a song called Come Some Rainy Day. They loved it, and all of a sudden, he's now a recognized songwriter, and they loved him in Nashville. They really did, and he had several co-writers that were excellent, and he brought them to a higher level, and he really had a gift. He was a special gifted person, and I was grateful for that.
Don, again, congratulations on all the success and being inducted in the Hall of Fame here in Rochester, and thank you for, making the Flower City bloom.
Amen. Fun for me.